and a warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. My name is Councillor Heena Makwana and I'm the chair of this committee. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. Please note that members of the committee may be using tablets or laptops to view the agenda. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts, and when you are invited to speak, please ensure your microphone is on so that you can be heard in the recording. For those watching via YouTube, if you are so minded, you can complete one of our resident feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. Okay, so before we go through our agenda, I'd like to introduce colleagues in the room. So to my right, I have Councillors Gohill, Smallwood and Batt. To my left is Ryan Dell, Democratic Services Officer, and then Councillors Sweeting, Garg and Gill, and Mr Tony Little, our co-opted member. Officers joining us this evening are Poppy Reddy, Donna Hugh, Taz Corsa and Julie Kelly. So good evening to you all and very warm welcome. It is a very hot evening, so please, if you need to take your blazers off, please feel free to do so. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence. Fine.
Yeah, we have no apologies.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting. Are there any? No, thank you. 3 minutes of the previous meeting on the 15th. Thank you very much. Councillor Garg?
Just because I'm new to the committee, I was just trying to understand, as part of the youth offer, are there like transporter buses, 2 of them in place now, or?
Yeah, ideally a question like that would have been raised outside of the meeting.
Sorry, so
yeah, no, that's fine, but in future reference, if you can just email across to Ryan and he can share with any information with the officers. Okay, so we agree in the minutes? Yeah. Agenda item 4, minutes of the AGM, 8th of May. Agree, thank you very much. Agenda item 5, to confirm that the items of business marked as part 1 will be considered in public and the items marked as part 2 will be considered in private. There are no part 2 items, so we move straight to agenda item 6, which is the overview of corporate parenting responsibilities. Do we note and endorse? Yeah, do we? Well, we've got our officers here. Would our officers like to add anything, or do we have any questions for our officers? First of all, Councillor Sweeting.
It mentions the recent changes introduced under the Children and Wellbeing and Schools Bill. You know, what are they, and will they affect us as corporate parents, please?
They just extend the corporate parenting duties to not just the council. So in terms of will it impact us, not as such. Will it impact our children? Yes, more positively. So although colleagues in health, police and other statutory bodies already support our children, we work in a multi-agency way, they'll have a statutory duty to behave as corporate parents rather than just council members and officers and our services. What that will look like in reality, we will work our way through, but it just places greater responsibility and onus on our partner agencies and not just ourselves.
And is the DFE leading on this? I think somewhere in the papers it did mention that, so how does that sort of fit in?
The bill is working its way through just now, so yeah, it is led by the DFE. It's a change in legislation. They are not actively engaging with us at this point on that specific point because they're very much focusing on the family first reforms that are going through, that I presented the last time we were here. But I imagine we're going to have a couple of years of change and reform in different bits of work.
Mr. Little?
How do we benchmark ourselves on this function?
And on corporate parenting, how do we know or think that we're a good corporate parent? Well, we do our own quality assurance audits, but the benchmarking comes really from our external regulators. So we have Ofsted and a range of others in just now, but every 3 years we have an ILACS inspection. They'll look at how we looked after children and our care experience young people. They have a range of criteria, the framework is there, and then we have an outcome. We're able to then see how others have done, so we can benchmark ourselves. And when we last had our ILACS, we were in the top 15% in the country. We had an overall outcome of outstanding, and with outstanding practice in our children in care. We had good practice in our care experience, care leavers, and that we've been doing a bit more work on that and hoping that when they come back next time we will fare better. But that's how we get an objective benchmark rather than just our internal work.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, so we wrap this item up. So Poppy, Donna, I don't know if you wanted to stay on, or Taz, you're staying on, or yeah? Yeah, you're welcome to leave. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 7 is the corporate parenting panel membership. Do we agree? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to 8 then is the persistent absenteeism review, the final report. So this evening what we're trying to do is note and agree the amendments that Ryan sent out to us all and agree the final recommendations so it can be taken to Cabinet. Do we agree? Councillor Sweeting.
Yes, I do agree. All I would ask is, do we know whether the schools have had any early view of the recommendations? Because a lot of the recommendations are asking our schools to, not step up because they're already stepping up on this issue, but undertaking the recommendations. So, seeing that we put out a consultation to our schools, as well as having members of the schools coming to us as witnesses, it would have been interesting to at least have had some idea of what they consider for the recommendations and how they would work those through.
To my knowledge, I don't believe that they would have been shared with the schools, and I think that I'm not sure if that would be completely appropriate because the recommendations are formed from the witness sessions that we've had. I understand what you're saying, and they were part of the witness sessions, but it's from our committee that we're making the recommendation based on all that evidence and interaction to our Cabinet. So, Ryan, is that right? It's not been, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Little.
In relation to recommendation, I would not want to hold us up at this stage, given how long we've been on this particular review, but I would like to record that I think there is a much bigger job to be done than the one that's encapsulated in the recommendation, in that, if I may put it this way, there is a sales job on behalf of education as something to be valued that is not undertaken either by the schools or by the authority currently. They take it for granted that school is a valuable thing, and I should think all round this table we accept it. But you could hear in the comments of some of the parents, and particularly the sort of parents who are most in need of the sales pitch, that they don't value education as much as, for example, holidays or the bother of getting their children up and out in the morning in some cases. So I think there's a bigger job than just asking the schools to look at telling new parents the job.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one about the stats. Will it be possible to include maybe more up-to-date stats to give to Cabinet to make it maybe not as bit more relevant? It probably is relevant, but having more up-to-date stats that we can get hold of or have access to for them to make a more informative decision on it?
I think at this stage, first of all, my question would be what stats in particular are you asking about? And second of all, I think at this stage we are really looking to just close this item off, and because something like that should have been brought up earlier when we were circulating the recommendation, so maybe then Ryan could have spoken to officers and explored that option. I think at this stage, I would say we just need to, it's going on for so long, so, you know, and you can appreciate that because you were involved right from the beginning. So, yeah, we'd want to just kind of agree these final recommendations so we can move forward. That's okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Sweeting.
Well, it was mentioned in the minutes, actually, and that we've just agreed that we wanted the most up-to-date statistics.
In the recommendation? Sorry, in the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. Ryan, anything to add to that?
So which stats specifically are we referring to?
There are some updates, but I don't think it was made particularly clear. I mean, there's some, I'm saying February and of this year, etc. All I'm saying is, can we look again and make certain that we have got the percentages, you know, on attendance in this report? Because what we need to say is things have improved in Hillingdon, and I don't think that's made as clear as we could possibly make it.
Okay, again, Councillor Sweeting, just something like that needs to be raised offline well in advance of a meeting like today. So if you'd spotted that maybe that's not reflected and it's been something that's been brought up before and minuted, it would be really good if you had raised it earlier than to this evening. So then it gives Ryan a fair chance to go back to officers and check any detail that needs to be checked, and potentially include that in the final report. So I really want us to move on. At this stage, we're not trying to bring in new information, we're not trying to explore different new avenues. We have been at this for a very long time, as you can well appreciate, so we do need to close it off. Mr. Little made a very valid point that this is a very, very I guess it's a crucial piece of work, but also it's something that's going to be ongoing, and there'll be developments in this area. So it's something that obviously when it comes back to this committee next year, we'll be able to explore further and ask for any further detail if we don't have it. But I'd remind committee members, everybody, that if you have any questions or concerns or queries, please ask offline in advance of the meeting. Do not bring those things to the meeting where, you know, it's difficult then for Ryan to explore all of that and answer any questions. Okay, thank you very much. Can we just now agree the amendments? Agree. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's move on then to agenda item 9, which is looking at a new review, thinking about policy review discussion and guidance. So does anyone have any kind of initial thoughts about potential topics and areas to explore? Councillor Sweeting.
I think before we look at any possible subjects, the persistent absenteeism issue we had been dealing with over 20 months. Now we haven't got 20 months before the elections next year. I think we've got 7 meetings. So are we looking at something that we can be contained within those 7 meetings, or are we looking at something that might well straddle the next council? Because I think that would determine really which way we're going on this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think that ideally, given the fact that we've just had a review which has taken such a great deal of time, it'd be really good if we thought of something, a topic that maybe is a lot shorter, or like a mini review, if you like, of a service area, which we can kind of close off perhaps before the election, so while we're all still in the same committee together, maybe. Did you have a suggestion? Yeah.
Well, some of mine are going to not fit into that box. I mean, we've got the issue of inclusivity. That is going to be a very big issue. So maybe we can just sort of put that to one side and realise that any committee forthcoming committee might be looking at that. Also, we mentioned in our comment on the school standards the issue of narrowing the gap between the advantaged and the disadvantaged to support school improvement. So again, maybe we could look at that one. And we've all seen various committee meetings, schools having to cope with falling roles, changes in their standard numbers, their admission numbers. So maybe that we can look at ways of supporting our schools with their falling roles, particularly in the primary sector. And then we've got the issue of NEETs, whether we could, maybe that would be a much smaller possibility, looking at the strategies that we're using for NEETs and whether we can, I know there's been a lot of work going, but maybe we could just look at that. Can we learn from maybe other places? And then something very close to my heart, because when I was an officer, we had increases in roles, but we've now got decreases in roles, which has meant spare capacity, spare classrooms. Maybe we could look at that and see whether there's any way of supporting schools as well as the community in using those spare spaces to the benefit of all. Now, I know many of those are going to be too big, but anyway, that's my 4 pence.
Thank you. That was really good. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I actually prepared something. I think it'd be nice to look at our third-party voluntary and the offerings and opportunities in Hillingdon. Across Hillingdon, we've got an incredible range of community-led groups that do brilliant work for children, young people and families, such as Scouts, Guides, local football clubs. I could go on. We also have community groups and youth centres and churches and mosques and gurdwaras, and offer mentoring and send support. They offer lots of different, like confidence, skills, friendship, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And a little bit sometimes a postcode lottery, and I don't necessarily actually even think that's got to do with the wealthiest or the unwealthiest people in the borough. And there's actually loads and loads of stuff sometimes going on in Hayes, the bereaved town centre part, and then there's sometimes some very little bits going on in somewhere like Harefield Village or Heathrow Villages. It's not actually on sort of like the natural lines that you might sort of assume. Also, like if you look at scout groups, they vary in the offering they give. So we could look at what the offering looks like across Hillingdon and where it's strong and where there are potential gaps. How easy it is for families to find access to these opportunities and afford them, and how some of these groups can potentially support each other to make them afford them, and what role the council plays both indirectly and directly supporting the group. So is there like a one-stop hub that people can log into and find every football club that they could attend, cricket club, tiddlywinks? How we help them with like venues, safeguarding, insurance and finding volunteers, and whether we could do more to promote good practice and collaboration between organisations. We'd also shine a light on the unsung heroes who run these groups, mostly volunteers and some of the great people of Hillingdon. If we get this right, we can make sure young people and families in Hillingdon, wherever they live, can benefit from kind of community support that makes a difference. There you go. That was just a little thing I prepared. Something I prepared earlier, as they said on Blue Peter.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Little, yeah.
Just to say, I think Councillor Smallwood's is a very good idea. I'm struck by the point he made about the gaps that there are. That it depends on activists promoting those groups as much as structures, and activists aren't evenly distributed across the borough. So I think it would be a good one.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Yeah. Councillor Sweeting.
I mean, coming back on that one, I think when we were looking at the youth offer, it was acknowledged that there were certain gaps in venues, and maybe to have a sort of dictionary of these groups and contact details, etc., because certainly there will be some within the borough that we are not privy of. We don't know that they're working, so I wouldn't necessarily be against this, but I'm still hoping that one of mine might well be put forward as well.
Julie, would you like to come in?
I just want to remind members that the work that we spoke about in the youth offer about a care and support directory has now gone live. It is available on the intranet and does map out, and you can put in whatever it is. If it's, and I've tested it out as part of the inspection, because what have we got? Voluntary, statutory delivered for domestic abuse, because we're in the middle of that inspection. Type it in, it gives us the where, the location. But that might still give you an opportunity to drill into particular areas, but that work has been completed. It is now there, and it's for all services for children and young people across the borough, and all ages as well. We moved away just from youth, that sort of 11 plus, into that sort of 0 to 19 and up to 25 if they have a specific need or disability.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Chair. I also liked Councillor Smallwood's suggestion. I've got two myself just to put forward for deliberation. The first is addressing the post-COVID mental health gap in schools. So the CAMHS wait times remain quite long, and early intervention in schools is quite inconsistent. So looking at the scope could be access to mental health mentors, school counselling capacity linked to CAMHS, resilience programs, trauma support, and impact of DFE funded activities. The second topic could be digital exclusion and educational disadvantage. A lot of children still lack reliable access to technology or broadband, affecting their homework and online safety and hybrid learning. So looking at sort of device distribution, safe digital spaces, parental digital literacy, and other external educational providers, and how they can support children. So those are two suggestions I had.
Yeah, thank you for that. With the first one, I'm just not sure if it will fall under the remit of this committee or health. So maybe we can just discuss that with officers, and we can come back on that one. But yeah, thank you. Councillor Cahill.
Thank you, Chair. I actually echo Councillor Batt's point about digital inclusion and especially about device poverty. I'm not sure if if a scope about that specific item would lead us all the way to next year, though, is the only thing I might add. I thought it was a great idea. I was going to suggest it myself, but didn't get my hand up in time. But I do also quite like Councillor Smallwood's idea. The only thing I might add is I can see how it might potentially expand into something quite wide. So maybe as a committee, if we find the correct parameters, we could keep it within that time frame that yourself and Councillor Sweeting suggested, to sort of April next year, the next 7-8 committee meetings. That would be my only suggestion.
Thank you. That's good. Councillor Sweeting.
Can I also mention officer capacity? We did have an issue with one of the recommendations for our now agreed review, and what we don't want to put officers under any pressure. However, we are here to scrutinise, and so I think we need to balance that with the officer pressure. I think some of these issues that I've listed, as well as the ones that have been brought by other members of this committee, are all very good issues. Maybe they will need to be taken forward in another place at another time.
Yeah, point well made. It is important that we do factor in officer time as well. So, yeah, but really good suggestions. Anyone else? Any other comments to make? Councillor Smallwood.
I just wanted to echo what Councillor Batt said about digital exclusion, and wonder whether we could consider having that as an information item for a meeting. I think we could probably, even if we did it over 2 meetings, like, if it was split into 2 parts or whatever it may be, I don't think there's any problem with that, but I think it'd be an interesting information item. I think we might struggle to get 7 months out of it, but it would certainly be interesting.
Yeah, fair point.
Thank you, Chair.
Julie, did you? Yeah, please.
I'm not going to suggest anything in particular, but having looked at the previous reviews before I was here and as I've been here, there is a significant gap in terms of social care that isn't corporate parenting. We've had a lot of focus on youth and community, a lot of focus on education. Not that I'm welcoming any additional, but there is a range of social care services. There's help and protection, there's our front door, which some of that was covered in Stronger Families. There are court services, there are fostering services. There's a number of services that, having looked back to at least 2017, haven't been looked at in any particular area that might enable the committee to be maybe a bit more discreet, if you're looking for a discreet piece of work, In terms of officer capacity, as always, we will try and service as we can, but that was it just feels for me a bit of a gap in that space.
Thank you for sharing that and bringing that to our attention. Anyone else? No? Great, okay, thank you. So I think at this point Ryan will take that and explore it with the officers and then report back to committee on kind of thoughts on next steps. So good work there. So we move on to agenda item 10, the forward plan. Any comments or questions? No? Great. Agenda item 11 is the work programme. Any comments? Sorry, Councillor Gill.
Just looking at the meeting agenda, there's nothing after the November one. Is that just because we haven't allocated what's going where, or unless I've got the wrong agenda in front of me?
That's mainly just because it wouldn't fit on the page.
Ah, brilliant. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
We're having an agenda item on the budget. I must admit, I did think, in my other life, I did think that we were going to have a budget report each meeting, but obviously I was sort of sleeping that one, but never mind. But we do need to have an update on the DSG. I mean, our minutes of this meeting showed, or last meeting showed, that that was forthcoming, that there would be information coming from the Department for Education on that. So when we do have the budget report at the July meeting, we do need to have, I think, specific information on that.
Okay, that's noted. Julie, did you want to, or any comments on that one?
Oh yeah, it's just we weren't going to have one because of the budget monitoring process, but it's gone live now and people are busy monitoring the budget, so we will come back, and I've committed to do that and be here. But if we want something specific on the DSG, we'll just organise the timings in terms of providing the overview report, because it is meaty. Each of the savings plans is quite meaty. So if at the next budget discussion we want a deep dive into the DSG, that's absolutely fine. I'll make sure Abby's here and we can provide that detail. Is that helpful?
Yeah, okay. Maybe that's something to worth us considering. And perhaps, Julie, if it's a case of looking at officer capacity on that as well, because I know that I don't want to encroach on too much of officer time with that, but if you're able to provide that update, that would be appreciated.
I don't think it's, and Abby may disagree, I don't think it's anything extra. It's something that is constantly being monitored and updated in terms of managing the DSG recovery plan and where we're at, so I don't see any issue with that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
All I would say is that there was discussion about this last time, that there would be something coming with yourself. So I do think it is an important, we need to know where we are with that. And so, yes, thank you very much, if that can come to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Great. Okay, so we bring the meeting to a close. That was nice and speedy. Thank you, everyone. Next meeting's on the 30th of July, so thank you very much and have a safe journey home.